One, two, three. Students of Law and Life, I'm Irene. Welcome to my first interview session, and I couldn't have invited a better guest for this. Welcome, Kang Hanar, DC lawyer and my dear brother.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Alright, before we get into deep stuff, let's start with something fun. Most people know you as a lawyer, but you actually started out as a soccer trainee back in Germany, and before that, you lived in the UAE. What was the experience like?
Well, as you know, we were in the UAE together. There's a lot of different people from a diverse background, different cultures, different religions. And my experience in Dubai in particular was actually a shock to me, especially when we gather up during lunchtime to share meals. Some of my friends were prohibited from eating beef because they were devout Hindu. Some of my other friends were Muslims and they were prohibited from eating pork. So the best kind of meals were always comprised of chicken, so we agreed on that. So that kind of experience actually helped me expand and translate that perspective into law, where we compare different kinds of systems and perspectives in arguments and legal systems.
How was it like in Germany then?
So I went to Germany because my parents fortunately found the opportunity to send me there so that I can study in a good environment. My other reason for going to Germany was to get trained to become a professional soccer player. And along that, I was getting trained and I was having one of the best times in my life. But unfortunately, I got injured and I had to stop playing soccer. But thankfully, my friends and my parents had encouraged me to always stay focused on studying, on my academics. So it was a difficult time to learn to balance two different worlds. One was studying and the other was playing soccer. But that was a great practice for me to learn discipline, which is very important in practicing law.
Now that you actually applied playing sports to law, it's very interesting because many people assume law and sports they don't have anything in common.
Hmm.
But do you think you training as a professional soccer player have affected the way you approach law?
Oh, tremendously. For three reasons, I'd say. First is learning teamwork, because in law you have to work with a team, usually. Secondly was discipline, learning how to put myself under a tight schedule so that I can develop myself and prepare to represent my clients. And third was rigorous training. At law school, we spend a lot of time studying. That doesn't only require discipline, but also this kind of grit, this kind of motivation to keep yourself going. So I say those three things are what really kept me going.
Thank you. And let's shift the gears a little bit and let's talk about law school. So many aspiring lawyers, so many aspiring lawyers dream of going to this path, including myself. But it's not always something we expect. Do you have something you wish you have known before you entered law school?
Well, there's one thing that pops up in my mind. It's to have the mindset of a lawyer before getting into law school. So many of my friends assumed that only after obtaining the license to practice law can we actually start speaking like a lawyer, acting like a lawyer, and listening like a lawyer. But in fact, law school itself is a professional school. And to have that professional mindset and to have the preparedness and attitude to raise one another and to build up on one another is very important. So speaking like a lawyer, always be prepared to give answers to certain questions. And listening like a lawyer, always be ready to listen and find out the actual legal issue when listening to a certain story. Even walking like a lawyer, somehow you must portray the attitude to serve your clients, because being a lawyer isn't just about looking good or sounding like a super articulate person. It's about this act of devotion to service for your clients. So all of that should embody your spirit to serve your clients.
Choosing a specialization is a big decision that could shape our entire career. How did you navigate your path? And any tips for us that have questions like that?
To be honest, my answer would be, I don't know. But to be frank, it took me a while to really find out what kind of options lie ahead of me. Many law school students assume that they have to specialize and get certain knowledge in a certain area in order to enter a certain field, which may be the true in some cases, but once you obtain the license to practice law and enter a law firm or a company, then that's where you will be delegated certain kind of roles, certain jobs. And the law firm, which has much more experience, will actually put you in a department where you will perform best. So you may really not know what you are good at. It's very important to know what you really want to do and what you are really good at. So just try to keep an open mind and be flexible about what kind of opportunities may lie before you.
And for the law students that are struggling currently, what do you think are the biggest challenges that they are facing or they could face? And how did you overcome them?
What are some struggles that you had to overcome over the course of studying law?
I think law is a very competitive field, and thus comparison has been one of my biggest problems or challenges that I've faced.
Comparison of yourself to others?
That's right.
Okay. That's right. In law school, competition is inevitable. Competing is good, but comparing is not good. I was very fortunate enough to have professors who encouraged me and reminded me of the special person that I am, the special person that my neighbors are. And one of the most respected professors always told us, don't compare, don't despair, don't pull your hair. They're just telling us, don't compare. There's no need for that. Oftentimes we get anxious. There's no need for that. If you do get anxious, then it's very important to find ways to mitigate certain stress, especially emotional stress that comes from just the act of studying itself and from different kinds of relationships you face at law school. And what I did was to pray and ask for a good friend who may encourage me. In fact, I already had a wonderful family and a group of wonderful friends who would always encourage me and mean no harm to me. So I'd say, you deserve love. Ask your close friends, speak to professors, especially in my law school, they have an open door policy. Just try to find some time to speak with some people who will support you.
You've been on this journey for a while now. If you could sum up some lessons that you've learned.
Well, actual period that I started practicing law is not that long. But along the lines of studying law from university and then to law school and then currently serving, I learned that it's first very important to recognize that God is leading my life and that He's leading me on the good path. Secondly, the value of family. I love my family, and I love my parents, and I love my sister. And third was the value of staying loyal to your friends. Your friends were loyal to you. You stay loyal to them because I am loyal to myself. They are the people who will stick close to you wherever you go.
You've participated in volunteering services in Jordan and Greece and also Germany. And you've served in different nations, had to encounter different cultures. What are the biggest lessons you've learned about cross cultures? Just serving people in general.
People recognize what is real. I learned this when I was serving the refugees in Jordan, Greece, and Germany. There was a language barrier. I didn't speak perfect Arabic, they didn't speak perfect English, but what mattered was that I was being with them and I was sharing whatever I had received. And even though we couldn't speak perfectly with one another, they just knew, and people felt what was genuine from my heart. I just really wanted to be with them, listening to their stories, how they lost some of their family members while crossing the sea, some very heartbreaking stories that I heard. And I cried with them, I just was with them. And I think that's what really mattered. Even if we cannot be super articulate about things, people recognize what is real.
With these lessons you've learned, how are you planning or are you already applying to your law journey?
When studying law and when practicing law, we encounter so many different people from different lives. Even within the Korean community, there's a diversity of background where people come from. So when I try to listen to them, I just try to be with them, listen to them. Even the people that I cannot understand, I still try to listen and really just be with them. Another thing is just looking at the laws themselves. When people come from different systems of laws, then it's very hard to understand one from another. But being open to such flexibility, being open to such diverse perspectives is very important. And that's how I'm trying to learn about other people and their systems as I continue my practice.
One thing that's crucial in law and life is speaking, and especially speaking in confidence. You've had to present in a lot of high pressure situations. How did you develop that skill?
Confidence is not emotion, it's a skill. You can develop it very easily. So start small. When I was in university, I was a very bad public speaker. I would stutter, my mouth would dry up whenever I try to speak in public. So I wanted to face this problem. I knew and I wanted to be a good speaker. Every week I had to make announcements for my soccer team as a soccer captain, and I just took on that opportunity. I tried to create some PowerPoint presentations, but ultimately I was so nervous when I was trying to speak in front of people, in front of hundreds of people. But I just kept going for it, one by one, step by step. And some practical tips is, first, believe in yourself. If you don't believe that you can do it, then everything else will fall. Second, use silence. Don't try to speak too quickly. Sometimes even being silent can gain a lot of attention and get people to start listening to you a little more. A third is make eye contact. Even when you're addressing hundreds of people or thousands of people, just assume that you're talking to a few of those people and look at each person in the eyes, because that is actually what you're ultimately doing. We're just gathered in one space, but you're speaking to each person. So it is a skill you can develop, and just try to remember these 3 rules.
As your sister, I've seen you firsthand on how far you've come. And I know that the road wasn't easy at all. There were moments of real struggle. What allowed you to persevere? And what pain are you looking back and say, well, I'm happy that happened because that shaped me who I am today?
That's a very deep question. Now, three things kept me going in law school. First was my faith in God, that He is leading me and guiding me, and that He is taking me on the good path. Second was my family and close friends. They provided unconditional support no matter what. So much love, so much encouragement. They always consoled me when there were difficulties. Third was my belief in the law school education itself. Yes, education was very difficult, but I knew that even if I don't ultimately pass the bar exam, I will still gain the ability to think critically and to develop my legal mind. So even though I'd sometimes not give perfect answers to questions, I was still on the track of progressing and becoming a better student, a better legal thinker. So those things kept me going in law school. One experience that really hurt me was when I was in law school, I was the youngest student there. And especially in Korean culture, it's very important that we respect the elders or the people who are older than you. And sometimes, just because they're older than you, they would kind of look down on me. Some of them would just totally ignore me just because of my age. And I thought that was a big problem, and I started assuming that everyone else in law school would start thinking like that about me. But it didn't take long for me to realize that it wasn't them, it was my expectation of those people that actually was hurting me. There was a time I had to lead a group of people to prepare for certain activities or certain competitions, and I was the youngest one. I felt so much pressure. And there was a moment where I realized, hey, this is my expectation of those people. Let me just start spending more time with them and try to spend some fun times with them. And they would know that I am not trying to be aggressive or that I am not trying to be a harm or a threat to them. Eventually, they saw my heart. They all knew I meant what I meant. So it is often the expectation I have of others that's hurting me, and not those people themselves. So that was a good lesson I learned, and since then I try not to take everything so personally. It was a great learning experience.
Saying this, you've reminded of the time when you presented to a bunch of undergraduate law students. As one student asked you what love is, and you replied, love is putting the expectations down. Would you say that still relates to you today?
Sure, a part of it. I think a practical way to approach loving our neighbors was to lower our expectations. And that was fundamentally because love is giving. Love is charity. As a Christian, I try to follow this commandment in the Bible. Love God and love your neighbors. And it was very hard for me to define love. But in 1 Corinthians 13, especially in the King James Version, it says love is charity. Charity is giving without expecting. Oftentimes we say we help others and we give to others, but even unconsciously, we expect something back from them. My role as a Christian, as a person who wants to love the neighbors, is to simply give without expecting. So even assuming that the other person would not change, I'll still be giving, and that'd be love.
That's amazing to hear, because that's what I just found out recently. God has been telling me as well to continuously give and continuously trust and continuously love others. But that would come back with a question, but Lord, what about me receiving? Why should I not expect anything to receive? But I realized looking back, I have received so much already, and there's only left for me to give. So that touched a lot of what I'm learning as well. So thank you for that.
Very cool.
And before we wrap things up, I wanted to ask a big picture question. From your perspective, what do you think is the biggest problem Korea is facing, especially in our generation?
There's a lack of a sense of unity. Us as a nation has achieved so much over the last 7 decades. But what is the point of all this progress if we can't have a better life? If people cannot hope for a good life, a good family, or happier days? It always breaks my heart to just simply know that Korea is the highest ranked country in terms of the number of suicides each person takes away each day. I think it's about 40 people each day. The person who just died yesterday may have been my cousin. It may have been my parents or my grandparents. It may have been somebody I crossed over at that bridge randomly. So even though we have made so much progress in numbers, at the heart of the people there's less hope. And we do value ourselves in numbers. Even little students, when they grow up in school, they are valued by statistics, good grades. How many times did you go and volunteer? Everything's by numbers. We literally call good qualifications as spec, which is a term used to define the capacity of weapons and machines. We are human beings. What is the point of having such good spec if you end up not being able to have hope for a better life? So there's a lack of unity and purpose. Why are we living? Why are we working so hard? Why are we studying so hard? So we need a unity and purpose in this country.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been such an insightful conversation, and I do hope that our country or the world brings more unity and more purpose. Thank you so much for joining me on my first interview session.
It's an honor.
And to everyone watching, please let us know in the comments which answer resonates with you the most. Thank you for watching, and 1, 2, 3.
Join my journey, Key.
약간 뉴스처럼 마지막.
Bum, ba, ba.
Ba-da-ba-ba. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks,
good job.